Hi, I'm Gavin, and welcome back to the S.O.U.N.D Project. So I'm getting to sit here today with my good friend, John Spicer. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah.
Glad you came by.
And we've known each other for quite a while now. We
Yes.
were just talking off camera a little bit. It's been probably getting close to 10 years.
Getting close to 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I think around 17.
Yeah, and we're here in your studio, Broken Soul, in Maryland.
Yes.
And yeah, so I want to start, maybe just, you can give a little bit of background on yourself, and then we'll kind of go from there, but maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into audio and all of this.
Yeah, it's been a long road for me. I got into audio, oh shoot, I was young in church, getting highly involved in church, and my church used to do these big, growing up, we did these big productions, Easter and Christmas. And I started in lighting, and that was fun for a little while, but I was always really curious about audio.
Yeah.
So I guess around the age of 14, 15, I started asking questions and getting involved and helping, and it just kind of took off from there. So most of my background is in live audio in the house of worship market. And over the years, I would get more and more interested about the science and the art of mixing and how to do it better. And I remember a number of years ago trying to figure out the way to improve my skills, because I was always having to learn my skills within the context of missions work or church work. And I was always curious about how far I could push my skills outside of that context. And so ultimately, that's what led me to the concept of, hey, I should build a studio or something in my house, maybe not necessarily for the purposes of recording albums and things like that, but just to have a personal mix space so I could work on my craft.
Yeah. And growing up, like when you're getting into audio at the younger age, were you ever a musician as well, or is it mostly on the live sound and mixing side?
Yeah, fantastic. I was a musician when I was in middle and high school. I was actually in a band. I played baritone, brass instrument.
Nice.
You know, and then I went from there. I went into chorus and did a lot of vocal stuff. But it was the nerd side of me that kept winning out with technology and signal flow and EQ and how do frequencies interact with each other. And so over time, the musician side of me fell off, and I just really kind of burrowed into the audio engineering stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because I kind of got my start as well in church. Like I was asked to help Bill at my church, like run sound. And back then, dating myself a little bit, but back then it was like, okay, you see when this cassette is getting a little low, that's when you flip it.
That's when you flip it.
And so, but I felt back then like, man, look at this responsibility I have. And I have it's a really a cool thing as a young person. But I actually talked to a lot of people, and they got their start at church or doing something like that. So.
Yeah, and it was always very fun and challenging, and I liked that responsibility. My church would do these massive productions back in the day, and so I found myself a 15 or 16-year-old person running a room with 1,500 people in it on these big activities, and there was just something really engaging about that. And there was this feeling of responsibility where don't mess up the transitions, because you can really kill the experience for people and take them out of the moment, but also the idea of being able to, from a musician perspective, look at your vocalists and your choir and your instrumentalists and play them like a band, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of get this mix of responsibly helping out the ministry, but also being an artist at the same time.
Yeah.
It was just addicting to me.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And then, this space came around. I remember you got in touch with me through Sweetwater and Dante Harris, I believe.
Yes, wow, some names going back in time.
How we got introduced, and you'd mentioned you had a space in your basement and that you wanted to well, tell me a little bit about what was your vision for this space?
My vision for this space was literally to have a space where I could come in and work on the craft of mixing without annoying my family. And that was really it. I did not have big plans of having tracking ability or anything like that. But what I remember was surfing the internet and looking at a lot of really cool rooms that you had done and some others had done, and getting some ideas of visually, like how did I want to be inspired in this space? But then I remember talking to you, and suddenly the world was opening up of, oh, I could really do that?
Yeah.
Because our space here is in the basement of my home, and it's not a huge space. It's not like a commercial studio space. But I realized talking to you that I had been a bit self-limiting and understanding what the art of the possible was.
Sure.
And so this has been a fabulous mixed space for me. It has really helped me work with my artistry, but it's also become a venue where I'm able to do album work for people and help them get their dreams launched and help them formulate their dreams, as well as some tracking capabilities when I need it.
Yeah. And I remember isolation was probably the biggest challenge to start with because of the location of this. It's in your basement, but what's directly above here?
My daughter's bedroom.
Yeah.
So, and it's a pretty modern house. So it's not like the floor was 5 feet thick above us, right? And at the time, my daughter was 4 or 5 years old, I think, maybe 6.
I think so.
And she had a ton of energy, and she would run around her bedroom, and I'm like, how am I gonna do this without her completely distracting me, especially if I am doing some recording? And at the same time, how do I, this space is like a cocoon where you get lost. It's like a time capsule, right?
It's true.
And so it's not uncommon for me to be working on something. I look up, it's 1 or 2 in the morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my daughter's supposed to be sleeping upstairs. So that was a huge consideration for us.
Yeah, I remember, with it not being a huge footprint, we had to, isolation typically takes up space.
Yes.
We could have had a bigger room if we didn't need to isolate it, but we, had a lot of different elements that went into that, but the mission accomplished. Like it's
fantastically, fantastic, very much. So I remember, it's kind of funny you talk about. I remember sometimes I felt like it was football, like it's a game of inches.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we want to do this isolation, but how do we maximize space? But it has been wildly successful.
Yeah.
We rarely. Actually, we've never really had any issues with isolation between my daughter's room and mine from an audio perspective. Like we're talking occasionally, if she's stomping around upstairs. Sure. But at the same time, my family is also very supportive. So sometimes we're like, hey, knock it off, and that's the end of it. But generally, we hardly ever hear each other.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like not wanting to disturb your family. One of my clients, he had mentioned he has a basement studio as well, and he had mentioned that like, man, I really would love for when I go up and show my wife what I've been working on, it's the first time she's heard it.
Yes.
Versus like you're constantly recalling mixes and making changes and things like that.
Before we built this space, I had a mix station set up down here, and I would be working on stuff, and I'd be like, oh, I think I got it, and I would go upstairs, and my wife would say to me things like, if I hear that segment one more time, you will die. And that doesn't happen anymore. Now I can bring her in, and she can hear things for the first time. And that's actually been great, because now, like if sometimes I want to check a mix with her or something, she has a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And it, just a great example is there's been a lot of times where I've gone upstairs and I found out everybody is in bed asleep, and they've been in bed asleep, and I had no idea.
Right.
So from that perspective, the isolation and just having a comfortable space to work has been phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, and you do a lot of different types of projects in here. I mean, I always kind of follow what you're doing, and from album projects to like voiceover work. I mean, it's while it's not very big, I mean, you can get a lot done in this space. Yeah.
So we've done we've done voiceover work for some clients that are doing like instructional videos. That's great. You talk about how many people I've had in here. Ironically, one of the most eye-opening things I ever did with having people in here was I was doing an album for a rap artist. He has like this whole ministry and outreach related to gangs and that type of society. Yeah. And he came in one day to track, and he said, I'm going to bring some friends with me. Yeah. So it was me and him. He brought in 2 guest artists. He brought in his producer. He brought in his promoter. He brought in his promoter's wife. I had like 9 people in this space. And I was like, what are we doing? But it worked flawlessly. It was fantastic. That's really cool. We've had a lot of people in here, but I've also had much smaller projects. We've done heart projects in here, and also a lot of late night mixing stuff for Livestream for churches during COVID. That was a big thing.
Yeah, I remember we talked around that time, and you were just saying like, suddenly I'm swamped with business of just doing Livestream.
Yeah, there was when COVID hit, a lot of churches, some of the ones I was affiliated with, immediately went to a situation where they turned their Thursday night practices into multi-track sessions. Yeah. So they would spend an hour or 2 during rehearsal like they wanted to normally, but then we'd roll all the cameras, and they would start the worship set from song 1 all the way through the end, one take.
Yeah.
And then we're like, here's the tracks.
Yeah.
And then 2.5 days later, you would need an EP for the broadcast.
Wow.
So there were, this place really was very beneficial to allow me to help a lot of churches at that time and
Yeah.
other organizations during COVID. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's one thing that's kind of a common theme with a lot of the projects that we did around that 2018, 2019 timeframe. The timing of it being, perfect to have it completed in time for what we didn't know was going to happen. But
Yeah.
with the pandemic, and I think about Tori Kelly's space in California, she did late night talk shows out of her studio, just being able to stream there. And David Crowder did the same thing. His tour ended because of the pandemic, but it got him to be able to just go straight into working on the new album.
I remember when you were finishing Tori Kelly's studio and we were talking about it. I'm like, that space was perfect for that type of work. And it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I was like, Gavin got another one.
Well, no, and this was no different, if you didn't have this space, it would have made that time period probably a lot different for you, like having to find another room to be able to mix in.
Absolutely. And it really was amazing. It felt really good to be in a position where organizations were struggling to figure out how they were going to meet the needs of the people they were serving. To be able to say, no, yeah, just send me the tracks, we're good to go, and then send them back something a couple of days later. It was really beneficial, I think, across the industry and across the nation.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking off camera a little bit before we started about how you're kind of in a little bit of a lull right here of using the studio, which is, I think that's kind of natural, and sometimes you go into seasons where you're just slammed and that's all you're doing. And then I know you love what you do, and it's you're working in a field that really is a calling for you, but also sometimes you can get burned out doing some things like that.
You can absolutely get burned out. And, for me, I notice it. I kind of make a transition from working in the studio and mixing goes from the joy of the art and the creativity to the mindset of just kind of get it done. Like make the client happy and get it done. So I just finished recently an album project and had a couple other things that I was able to wrap up. And I'm kind of in a period now. I need to do some software updates and all, because I'm loath to do that when I'm in the middle of a project.
Right.
But I've been kind of going through in the last couple of weeks, just going back through my catalog of stuff that I've done in the past and rediscovering it. Yeah. And it's very motivating. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes you just get so far down in the weeds, you need a break. And I'm kind of in that space right now. And I'm loving it.
What, I guess when kind of things ramp back up, what would be your ideal next project? Like, what would you like to do next?
That's a great question. So and I'm always torn in two directions, because my background is actually live audio, and that's my first passion, is like a room full of people enjoying art and music, especially in the church world. I think in the studio, the types of work that I really love are doing things out of a live arena, that recreating those moments, recreating those spaces. But the other types of work that I love to do are working with artists who are not mainstream, and they're looking for an avenue to make their stuff like more professional. Yeah. And I've seen some really great artists grow where they've decided to take the time, and I'm going to find a good producer, and we're going to track it well, and then we're going to have a good mix person put it together. And stuff that may not be big budget, but that's what I absolutely love. Yeah. And I like things musically that are not, dare I say, mainstream. There's a lot of music today that is just, lather, rinse, and repeat. Sure. There's still some really creative people out there trying to put some really good stuff together. And those are the types of projects that I really enjoy.
Well, I think those artists, if they find you in particular, they'll be lucky, because I know how much care you put into what you do.
Thank you.
And, it's something where I know you don't settle until it's exactly what it needs to be. So
yes, and I think my wife would agree with you based upon some of the evenings at what time I go to bed, or I should say the mornings.
Yeah. But you need that for because I got into this whole field because I'm also a musician. Sometimes I forget it with the stresses of work and things like that.
Absolutely.
It's like you don't have as much time for the creative side, but I literally got into this because I love music, but if you're working on a project, you want someone involved that cares about it as much as you do, which is hard to find, honestly. And I feel like you do that for your people.
I try very hard, because there's there's not only the do it the best you can for them, but there's always the personal challenge of what can I learn? What can I do better? What can I try that I haven't tried before?
Right.
And it's actually tying it back to the room. This is one of the things I loved about this room, is because when I decided to put this room together, I really kind of wanted to put myself in the situation that I had no excuses. So that if the product wasn't good, there was only one possible reason it wasn't good, and that was me.
Yeah.
And because of that, because of the space that I have here, I have many times been able to say, that's not right, and I know it's because of me, and I'll make a breakthrough, or I'll learn something.
Yep.
But it's also motivating, and it's encouraging, because it feels really good to be operating in a space that is well put together and know that I have the tools at my disposal, and it actually motivates you rather than discourages you.
Yeah.
And I've mixed in spaces that weren't right, and it's discouraging because you never know, well, is that me? Is that the room? Is there a standing wave in here? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And that can just be demoralizing.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, I think I've told this story before on our podcast, but when we were working with Tyler Joseph from 21 Pilots, it was 2 a.m. when we got finished with everything, and he came down to listen for the first time, and he sat there, he listened to a few reference tracks, and then his first words were, "Oh no." And I was like, this is 2.5 months of a project. I'm like, that's not what I want to hear, you know? And, but he said the next words were, "I'm the weak link now." He's like, this room, I hear all the things that are problems that I didn't hear before, and now I gotta, fix them, And
so I totally resonate with that. And I have a similar experience in that, I love working with people, and I love people. And at times I'm a bit empathetic, and I have friends that will come in and they will listen to mixes that they put together in this space. And you can just watch the expression on their face, because they're hearing things in their mix they hadn't heard before.
Sure.
And it's like, that's an opportunity to be encouraging. It's like, hey, that was a really great approach. But sometimes they tend to gravitate on, I never heard that before, and I don't like it. And it's like, well, it's okay. It's okay. Calm down. This is how we learn. And, but yeah, spaces like this are just so empowering at times.
Well, and we talk about kind of the size of this room. It's not that huge of a space. No. And normally rooms of this size struggle with the low end.
Yes.
But that's not the case here. There's another studio we did in Las Vegas for Studio DMI that's, we joke saying it's like a hallway, not necessarily a room, but it's the best sounding room they have at their facility, and it's just like doesn't make sense. But it's like there's a lot of things that went into this. It's not only the room itself and the treatment and things like that, but also the Trinov system, which is a game changer.
That is an absolute game changer. And I come into this space, I'm like, I sometimes just, it doesn't deserve, I don't deserve a space to sound this good in my home. Sometimes is the way it feels like, right? Especially for the dimensions. The Trinov is a game changer. What it does to the center image is mind blowing. Yeah. But even the bottom end in here is way better than I deserve. And I will say sometimes it's challenging because you get spoiled in here. Yeah. And then so it's like, it took me a while once we made the transition in the space to really kind of get a sense on, when I'm evaluating translation elsewhere, how critical to be or how not critical to be. Because if it wasn't like it was in here, something's a little bit off. It's like, well, no, I have to be a little bit more cognizant and honest about different types of playback systems.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, this room sounds. I had years ago, after we finished building it and got it all set up, I had a young man come in, and he was just curious, and we listened to it, and he sat down and listened to a couple tracks, and the first thing he said was, "I hear new colors."
Yeah.
And it was like, that was the perfect way of articulating my experience, right? Once we got everything really set and tuned, and love it in here.
That's awesome. Well, and I pull up this room often for clients when they're, especially if they're doing a one-room studio in their house. It's like, what's possible. And a lot of times when you're doing that, you don't have a lot of space to work with. And sometimes I've had the conversation multiple times where people ask me, is this even worth doing?
Absolutely.
Like, is it even worth doing? Because all I've got is this amount of space. And this is the first room I pull up. I just say, this room sounds amazing. There's challenges and compromises along the way, but we made it happen because, like, a lot of time people think when it comes to a project that if you can't do it perfectly, it's not worth doing. And it's like, that's not the case. You you make sure that you handle everything to the best of your ability, given budgets and given everything else, and make sure that you put together a good sounding space. And that's, what we did
Perfect
here.
is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And there's been, because I kind of had some of the same concerns before. And we kind of did the live end, dead end design in here. One of the things though that has been really interesting is there's a bit of a mind shift when you're working in a space like this, because while it's small, it's intimate. So I've had a number of tracking sessions where, I'm in the space with the artist being tracked.
Yeah.
And that is an intimate type of relationship where you're in the moment and you're working on the art and you're not separated by a piece of glass.
Right.
And with the producer, we're going to all sit here and just collaborate without it feeling sterile.
Right.
And I think there's probably some artists that wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with that, but a lot of the people that I work with are, and it is so interactive. And it's just a mind shift about how are we approaching our art and how do we work together as a group and as a team.
Yeah. Well, I think, that having someone in this room, just a few feet away from you, it's like, also it speaks to who you are. That doesn't work for everybody.
No, not at all.
Like
Not at
as
all.
a person, I think you have a natural ability to make people feel comfortable and and supported, and so I think that works for you. But yeah, everybody's different in what they need. Like sometimes people need that separation. Sometimes it wouldn't work all in one room. But I think space is working out.
Yeah, you're bringing out a very, very important point. It's at the end of the day, this is art.
Yeah.
And art is about emotion and people and interaction.
Yeah.
Different strokes for different folks. But I have found working together in a space like this has been way better than I thought it would be. And there's other workflow tangibles. Like for instance, when you're all in the space together, it's really easy after you do a couple takes to immediately turn on and say, and this is what it sounds like coming off of the monitors, right? Without them having to do things through headphones or walk back into the control room, et cetera.
Yeah,
so
that's great. So what's next for Broken Soul?
I don't know. That's a great
Is
question.
By saying I don't know, is that a scary feeling, or like there's all these opportunities and
No, it's not. It's not scary. It's like we talked about. At the current period I'm in for a couple of weeks, I've just had the kind of the opportunity to rest and take some breaths, and I'm getting the time to spend some time with my daughter. But I think there's a lot of opportunities on the road, especially with what's going on with the House of Worship market. There's a lot of churches that are growing back on the backside of COVID, and they're doing some very neat artistic stuff.
Yeah.
There's also, I see a lot more people around here that are interested in getting their music out. So when I say I don't know, it's not because I'm at a loss for an answer, but I actually see a lot of things that are in the front. I'm just kind of waiting for the right thing to come up.
That's awesome. I love the fact that we've got to know each other really well over the years, and every time you post something about a new project that you're doing, I'm just like, man, it's like the little room that could, right? It's like we built this place, and I love seeing it come to life, and all the other lives that it also touches at the same time.
I have a privilege with this space in that I get to do that. I've worked with people everywhere from, like I said, from rap artists to I've done a heart-based album here. I've done a lot of church work. I just finished a really great album for a guy out of Oakland, and like his influences were like Paramore and groups like that.
Yeah.
So from a genre perspective, I tend to touch a whole lot of different things. But for me, the common theme is always the people and the artistry and what they're trying to accomplish, more so than being more like what might be a commercial studio, which takes a lot of different types of work around the business.
Yeah.
I tend to take work around the artistry.
Yeah, that's great. I love seeing what you're doing, and I appreciate you too taking the time to be on the podcast.
I've been watching your podcast for a while now. Like, he's doing such a great job. And then when you called me, I was like, oh, heck yes, I'm doing this. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks again, John.
I appreciate
you joining. Yeah. That's been another episode of The S.O.U.N.D Project. Thanks for being a part of it, and we'll see you next week.